Today there's a note on Eledon discussing the R&D meeting the company held yesterday in New York. The R&D day included presentations on Tegoprubart applications in kidney transplant, islet cell transplant, liver transplant, and other solid organs that are in development. The most relevant things for the stock are the announcement of the data presentation time and date for the phase 1B data update that will be held in early August at a scientific meeting. So this will be the World Transplant Congress on August 9th. The phase 1B data is the open label trial that has been extended several times. We've seen data from 13 patients. We now expect to see those same patients followed for longer time periods and additional patients who have been treated longer, expanding the database and showing more data for survival of the organs and overall outcome of the patients. This will be one of the things that we expect to move the stock, since the trial is designed with the same treatment regimen as the phase 2 trial, and that trial is the active control where Tegoprubart is being tested against tacrolimus, the standard of care for immunosuppression in kidney transplant. The phase 2 trial, known as Bestow, will be presented in November at the American Society of Nephrology's annual Kidney Week meeting held from November 6th to November 9th. So the two trials in kidney transplant will be, or have been scheduled for presentation early August and early November. We had previously known that they would be mid-year, and toward the end of the year, we now have the dates and the conferences, which, reading between the lines, tells me that a manuscript or a rough draft of the manuscript has been presented, and the company, or at least the head clinical investigator, knows the general conclusions in the trial, and at least in the open label trial, they have seen the results and will be giving the update at the meeting in early August. Also, at that same meeting in early August, they will be presenting data on liver transplant and plan to file an IND in early 2026 to begin the clinical trials for liver transplant. Another important indication, and the second most common organ transplantation that is performed in the U.S. The presentations also include a discussion of the islet cell program, in which they transplant the cells that make insulin into patients with diabetes. The company previous data presentation has included 3 patients. They've received grant funding for another 6 patients, which they expect to enroll by the end of the year. That's significant in that there's enough interest in this program so that a research foundation will be funding the patient treatment, reducing the cost tremendously for Eledon. So not only does that show interest and acknowledgement of this as a future treatment, but it also saves them a lot of money. So good news on the financial side, and also good news to see the islet cell transplantation program expanding. In the note, I discussed a new measure for clinical trials that is intended to capture more of the data that could lead to graft failure. It's known as iBox. No explanation as to why it's called that, but it includes the glomerular function estimate, EGFR, and also detects some other measures that could lead to transplant failure. This iBox measure has been approved in Europe for inclusion in European clinical trials, and the FDA is evaluating the use of iBox as a primary endpoint in clinical trials. Either way, the company expects to include it in the phase 3 as either a primary or secondary endpoint. Lastly, the company announced a collaboration with Sonova Biotherapeutics. That is a company that has developed a method for transplanting cells into patients. Sonova will be using Eledon's Tegoprubart instead of tacrolimus, which is the standard of care for immunosuppression after organ transplant. So good news in that the uses of Tegoprubart are expanding, and more companies and research foundations, both public and private, have been including it as the immunosuppressive drug in their regimen. So that's good news and continued acknowledgement of Tegoprubart as a potential replacement for tacrolimus. In conclusion, we're reiterating the outperform rating and the $10 price target.